This session brought to you by Odyssey Games for pre-orders and sealed product, CCG Prime for tons of singles and supplies, Cardo Doko for international rulers looking for product, and fowlibrary.com for articles and wonderful deck lists, as well as our guest lecturer members Vite Ramen, King Pearl Shine, and Mognite. Class is in session. Well, howdy there, rulers. Welcome to just felt like doing something different. Well, howdy there, rulers. Welcome back after a long week of Force of Wheel to your favorite ever live Force of Wheel vodcast. It's office hours. I can't do that for a whole hour.
With your host,
DM
Yellowstone
and DM 073.
Share up around these.
We're glad to share it. Yeah, welcome.
Why did this happen?
I don't know. I just felt like it. I don't know. I think the screen says Predator, so just like that, like hard R on Predator, just made me. I don't know. My brain went into weird places. It's been a day. Anyway, welcome after a long week of Force Wheel to your favorite ever live Force Wheel podcast. It's Office Hours featuring myself, DMO73, and I'm joined as always by Paul Reisman.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Paul. No Mike tonight.
Not Southern.
Correct. Mike could not join us tonight because he is on a work trip, so we wish him well in his work travels and wish him when we'll see when he comes back. So, boy howdy, it was a crazy week this past week. We had we get to stream the pre-release on Wednesday. The following day we got the ban list. The set dropped. We started getting a ton of. We finally got to see the secret rares, which we'll kind of go through here tonight. It's been a lot. It's been a lot of stuff. So we're glad to have you. We're glad to be here to talk about it. And I do want to say thank you all for being here. If you like what we do, we want to consider supporting the channel. You can consider clicking that join button down below. It's the easiest way to show that you are supporting us. Get you all kinds of cool perks like the emotes that you see being used in the chat, as well as cool merch. Speaking of merch, our new playmats are finally live. Yay! Let me pull this up really quick. So we have our new, the new Fow Festival Night Festival variant, thanks to AO No Taylor. This is available over on inkedgaming.com. You can go check out the link in the description below to pick one of these up and support the channel. This was just a really cool piece of artwork for the Fow Fest mat. And when I was working with Taylor, I was like, look, I want to make one that's just exclusive for the festival, but then I also want this artwork to be able to be out into the world. And so we made this kind of night festival variant, which if you look really closely, you can see it has a little nod to Hero Cluster in it, which I think is very, very cool. That is very different from the initial one. We also did put up, if you've seen in our feature matches, we have the Crest double play mat that has all the zones on it. That is actually available for order on inkedgaming.com as well. You can pick one of those up for yourself and do that. So yeah, let's talk about, first things first, let's talk about pre-release environment, Paul. What was pre-release like for you?
So pre-release for me was interesting in that when I first started cracking the cards, I was just like, oh, cool, I get to use like the possession area, or I get to use the Shinobi EX area. That seems pretty interesting. And then I read my cards and I was like, oh, this doesn't work that way. So I was like, I mean, it's great that I have this and all, but I don't really get to use this mechanic until I have the full set, unfortunately.
Sure.
Which is fine. That being said, it was still a good fundamental foul, albeit a little bit less fun than when we had just the first wave of Hero Cluster. I think those rulers provided something, and that set was a lot more like flexible and a lot more like, trying to think of the right phrase. More of the cards were able to be used in combination with one another.
Sure. Yeah, I do think
it's a little bit more siloed.
I do think that this was a little bit so much of Hero Cluster was just kind of like a lot of standalone cards. and not necessarily complementary to each other, or like feeling the need to make them complementary to each other. And set 2 just had cards that just like were uncastable unless you pulled this, right? Like thinking like painter gear, or sorry, not painter's gear, but like hammer gear, not usable at all unless you had not only painter gear, but also like a way to be able to play it off of a gear source. You need recycling robot. Like they were just like weird things. Like I think I got halfway into my first testing hand and I went, oh, I have no way to play these cards because they required me to have gears, like produce will with them with gears. And I was like, oh, I don't have any way to do that, which is great because I was able to then cut it. But I would say that I think the cards themselves felt like, while there were aspects of cards that we couldn't utilize, the cards themselves felt like just solid foul cards that like felt good to play. It felt very similar to like, it felt similar in the way that like Dual Cluster had guys who could do Revolution, but also like you could really only, like ordering in that limited environment felt really weird because you like would still have to tap them to call stone or stuff like that. So it's like, do I really want to be ordering this, or like how many times do I think I'm going to order in a game? So it felt in that same kind of way that I was reliant on the cards themselves for what they were, which is always fun to me in a limited environment because it gives me a taste of what the cards are and then puts ideas into my head to go deck build. So I think from that sense, the limited environment is really, really good. They've kind of knocked it out of the park back to back with these limited environments. They've just felt like very good and very varied, and not just, oh, you packed the best, you win, or, oh, you packed this engine, you win, right? Because we've certainly had pre-releases in the past where it's like, oh, you got a whole light deck and I drew all the blue cards, like, cool, you win, right? This, because I played against ninjas, I played against metal life forms, I played against gears, I played against kind of generic stuff, I played against the possession area, and like being able to see all of those varied strategies in the limited environment and then also feel like I could play against them was really, really nice. I really liked it. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. What is it? Did Dan say you can buy the double play mat on Inks? So we have for Ruler School? Yeah, you can. You can go buy it yourself, Dan. There you go.
You don't have to ask me to ask Jeremy to buy you one.
You just go buy it.
Just go buy it.
Inked Gaming also right now is having like 50% off one item. So like you might even be able to get it for like super cheap right now, and you can get it with like the stitched mat, like the stitched edging. It's nice. Yeah, it's been fun. It made me, I always like when pre-releases don't have blowout cards. And while and this pre-release very much felt like there wasn't a lot of blowout kind of stuff. For instance, like the guy that Paul Clute is who we played against in the last round of my pre-release, and we were both undefeated. And in our game 3, he got whistling summoning, and so he was using X the Black Cat, and he like off the top, he's like, turn 1, Goddard, try to go for 5, and then he just looks at me and he's just like, no. And then we finished the game out and he just like doesn't do much, and we finished the game out, he's like, you want to see what we hit off of the Goddard? And I went, sure. And he went, 2 of my Light of Megiddos, 2 of my Rusty's Claw technique, and the spell to the possession kill spell. He was like, no resonators to put into my EXO. And I was like, oof. Like, big old. But, like, that's the same kind of thing. Like, you'd think that Goddard in, like, a limited deck, if you hit Whistling Summoning, suddenly Whistling Summoning is just like, oh, this is just gas, right? It's going to be good all the time. But, like, even in that environment, it wasn't just the be-all, end-all you win, which I really, really like those kind of limited environments because I think it gives you the most taste of all the cards. It makes it feel like in a sealed where you just kind of get what you get and you can't throw a fit, that stuff is playable, like stuff is more playable. I played Grand Leone. I resolved Grand Leone in pre-release. So...
The biggest boy.
The biggest boy.
The biggest boy.
But
in
like,
the set.
but it was fun. I mean, like, it was an environment where every card I wanted to read it and try it, and then seeing people play the cards that I didn't pull was exciting. It was fun. So kudos to another well-designed set that made itself very, very fun for limited. And it gave me some ideas of like what cards I'd pull into the cube as well, which I always like.
I think
Cough,
part
cough.
of that is the
Go ahead.
is the cough cough. Your wind lady.
Windia. Yeah, I
Wind
don't think she could be in the cube. I think she immediately proved herself in that environment.
I think a lot of it has to do with sort of the new approach to building pre-release kits, because not having stones and other like just like other like fodder is really helpful in like being able to see more cards that might be actually useful to you, and knowing that every pre-release kit is just sort of stacked is really nice.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, with the contract rulers, like it used to, there's no need to replace packs anymore, which is nice.
Yeah,
because like even if you pull a ruler pack and you hit the ruler, the contract is still just a chant, so you can just use the chant side. Unless you're like me and you pull Reflector Refrain and you're like, both of these chants are garbage. But like you can do it.
not today.
Yeah, not today.
Not today. Yeah, but it was good. It was just good back and forth. I didn't feel like I had like a distinct advantage over other people. It was very skill intensive, and that's when FOW gets the best.
That is when FOW gets the best.
When it's more skill focused.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's talk about these secret rares, because the secret rares going into this weekend with the pre-release kits were unknown. They didn't spoil them like they did before. Mm-hmm. We showed you our pink spider one, so I'm not going to pull that one up because we pulled that on the pre-release cracking video or live stream, which was a total blast to be able to do that so early and like hang out with people and do that. But we have Predator here, good old Cthulhu dinosaur, one of 3 that is in a pretty clearly different pose. It's Predator and then Reflect Refrain are in fully different poses, and ironically enough, all 3 of those are my favorite. Because I like the fact that they look so different from the regular ones. This Predator looks absolutely sick. It really leans into that like Cthulhu kind of, like you could just tell the Cthulhu and dinosaur fusion going on here. It's just like gets me really, really good. And then Pepsi Man. Here's Pepsi Man. Good old Dendrobium. Honestly, it looks pretty cool. I like the fact that his artwork in this is like the body of him is a little bit more refined than in like the traditional Dendrobium spell. Looks very cool. The blue-red in person like is like really sharp. And it looks really, really nice. And then we've got Ethereal King. Sorry for this tiny picture here. Honestly, my least favorite of them. Like Ethereal King, least favorite, because it's like he's so small on the card. Like if you look at the Ethereal King secret rare, he just doesn't take up a lot of the space, and I just like feel like that's a missed opportunity. Like we could have made him a lot more imposing, and he's just like, I'm here. And so I just don't really, I don't know, not my biggest fan of this one. Still looks, don't get me wrong, still looks good, just not my favorite. But my absolute favorites are Reflected Refrain.
Yeah,
these are
hands down
so good. I have three refrains already. Like I already have 3 refrain secret rares because I want a full playset of both of these. Because they look so good. I was telling someone like Reflect and Refrain have been around in this game for very long, and the orders for Reflect and Refrain keep them looking really like childish and like playful, which is, don't get me wrong, the whole kind of archetype of how they've presented themselves throughout all of FAU's history. But the secret rares just have this like seriousness to it, like with the really thick black lines and just everything's so defined, and it's just like, oh yeah, I like it. I like that direct like disconnect between how they normally look and how they look on these. So Paul, what about you?
Absolutely.
Which one's your favorite? I think.
I would say it's between Reflect and Refrain for me as well, and it's mostly because of the background. So I appreciate that there's not like I get it, right? We want to make sure like the dual color rulers have the dual colors that they are in the art. But there's something about the minimalist design of just yellow and green, like kind of going together.
Yeah.
Um, Fow's always done that really well. There are like some really good Ubers that I remember that were
Hmm.
just we're just gonna make these good monochromatic minimalist pieces of art, and they were just really good.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I'll be the secrets still look really good regardless, but those two have got to be my favorite.
Yeah, for sure. I've told people that my current active plan is to get a playset of Reflect and Refrain, and then at least one of the others. And then if the opportunity arises, I'll like finish playsets of Pink Spider because stealth. So like you gotta have your stealth. You gotta have stealth 2.0. But yeah, these look really really sick. It makes me very excited for what set threes are gonna look like. Oh, we should probably talk about set 3 too. Gosh, we have so much to talk about. This last week was crazy.
I don't
Jeez
know if I
Louise.
saw this announcement.
We've seen the poster for set 3. It's on Converging Wills. Let's go. I'll go grab that real quick. Welcome to the live audibling of what we're gonna do. Gotta go over. Just download this.
We're live right now.
We're live right now.
No edits.
Nope. Not a single edit was made. No, I don't want you to share. I just want to go to your page, Converging Wills. Show me your profile. Here it is.
Oh man.
So the War of the Suns is set 3. And we've seen a little bit of it. Not a ton, but we've seen a little bit. You wish you had ordered more of the Ruler collection? Boy, howdy. Just wait until Wednesday when you get to see the unboxing of that. Oh, it's so good. Okay, so this is War of the Suns. It is the information about War of the Suns was posted by Converging Wills. So the whole idea is 10 rulers in this. So 10 rulers in this set, 5 of which are moon children. Okay, so I know when people are posting like, oh, 10 rulers and 5 moon children, or sorry, not moon children, sun children. So 10 rulers and 5 sun children. No, Converging Wills confirmed for us. It's 5 main rulers, who are the characters we're seeing here, and 5 sun rulers, or 5 sun child rulers. So that's what we got going on here. It releases in February. We got this little musketeer looking person, this cyber ninja, a mermaid. You can't see her tail, but that's a mermaid. This Gil looking guy. Like, is Gil coming back, or like the Gil equivalent coming back? And then whoever this elf looking dude in the top right corner is.
Got a book.
Yeah, he's got a book. So this looks really, really cool. Fow continually delivering just like a hype after hype, just continually ride the hype train. Like something comes out and I'm like, great. And then I'm immediately on to like, what's the next thing? They've really got me hooked on that regard. So yeah, this looks very exciting. I can't wait to see. Yeah, and Sun Children, like the direct opposition, probably like working with Megiddo or working with Solaris, most likely, because Solaris is Sun. So like probably giving the power of Solaris to people who aren't gears, like Ainz and stuff, is probably what we expect to see in here. So like, oops, all villains, maybe. I guess we've had that kind of set before of like, oops, all bad guys. So that's not particularly surprising. Yeah, this is very exciting to me. I'm very excited to see what comes out of this. Oh, okay, so let's see. We've talked about pre-release. We've talked about dope secret rares. We've talked about set 3. What other crazy things happened this week? Let's see. Oh, right, the ban list.
Oh, that little thing.
That little thing. Yeah,
hardly worth mentioning.
Yeah, it came out on Thanksgiving. Like an
Thanks,
hour,
Fow.
like an hour before I went to Thanksgiving with my family, is when the ban list dropped, and I was like, I know what I'm thankful for. This
No
ban
worse.
list, this ban list. To me, so for those of you who didn't see our video, we did a quick little short about it just to go over it live, kind of like later that evening when it happened. Shout outs to just in general people who've been watching the shorts. It's been very cool to see the engagement with those. If it's something you guys want to see us do, try to utilize more, let us know. If you have some ideas of like things we could do with the shorts. We're currently trying to consider utilizing the shorts as part of our new Force of Will 101 video that we're working on right now, to use the shorts as a supplemental tool for legacy archetype mechanics. So like a 1-minute video about null, a 1-minute video about mastery, a 1-minute video about inheritance, like something that doesn't make sense to talk about in the context of a full tutorial video on FOW, but is worth, especially in a Wanderer environment, is worth teaching you about. So that's kind of our thought there. So yeah. So we did that, but let's talk about the list for those of you who maybe didn't see it, because it's insane. It's effective as of Thanksgiving. No longer banned. Forest Meditation and Kaguya Sealed God of the Moon. Hooray, I'm good with both of those. Those are both fine unbans. Banned Origins of the Seven Land and Warhorse. I'd like to thank the Academy for this award. We did it, boys.
This seems familiar.
This seems very familiar. So here's the thing. Here's the funny thing. And now I can't take full credit for this, right? But here's the thing. I'm going to take credit for it. I have now gotten a card banned. I have now gotten a ruler banned, and I've gotten 2 cards banned. I have influenced this ban list by my personal vindication, and I will continue to work on it. Because I said no Warhorse, no Origins. I think the format will be much better. And then the tournament for FowFest happened, and everyone was like, oh, this tournament was so much better. And then I told the company, like, hey, everyone really enjoyed it. Here's the results. And they were like, cool, bet. And then a month later, banned Origins and Warhorse. I'll take it. Thank you. Take
your victory lap.
I'll take it. No longer combination banned. Things that I definitely didn't expect to see came off this quick, but I'm kind of glad to see. Yeah. Fair spell and setting the stage, with some of the things that were kind of abusing that idea not being good. It's fine to let those both come back. Rewriting Laws in Melfi seems interesting, and I kind of like it for decks like Welser, like let those green storm combo decks kind of come back. I'm okay with it, especially since we don't have Lycion and Magical Dragon. Feels fine to me to keep them back allowed. Guinevere and Spacetime Watcher plus Unity of the Machine Knights. That one's for you, Robert. They gave you one of your 2 back. that one's for you, Robert. That one's cool to have come back. Origin the Seven Lands and Ainz. Origins is gone, so that makes sense. And then new combination bans is Gerda with Killua, because they just don't want you drawing a bajillion cards off of Gerda really fast. Heart to Heart Talk plus Hide. Thank you for proactively banning that before it became a problem in the meta, because it was going to absolutely become a problem in the meta. Set 1 card for 0 and then use it immediately for free every turn was going to be gross. Also Back to Nature and Painter Gears. Really, really nice. Just not to have that problem, that they like noticed that in advance. Spirit of Decay plus Asuka. This one to me felt like kind of just like I Spy going, stop it, go do other things. Like, don't get me wrong, Asuka, like, it's a good combination. Like, Spirit of Decay is just a good card for Gravekeeper decks. So I do kind of get them saying that you can't use Spirit of Decay in what is currently the best reanimate deck. They're saying like, go do other things, make this deck feel different than other reanimate decks, which is fine for me. Child of the Light Moon, a Child of the Fire Moon, Squirrel of Solari, and Reconnaissance Gears. Thank you very much for again proactively hitting this. And Engineer of Eternal with Falchion. As someone who has had a turn where I went second and put 4 bodies on the field, 2 additions, and still had 5 cards in my hand, that card combination makes sense to ban. Because turns out it grows. Yeah, like this list is fantastic to me. I know that some people have said that they wanted to see Sprinting Steward get hit, and I understand that the aggro players or that the control players don't like seeing aggro get such a good tool, or like some Inferno combo players having such a good tool. But honestly, let them have it. Like, it's okay. It's like Sprinting Steward has continuously shown that it's a card that as long as you're prepared for it, you won't get clapped by it. And I just think I stand by that. Paul, I just ranted a bunch. I'm tossing it over to you. Give me your thoughts.
I'm really glad Warhorse is gone. I think that card, I had a love-hate relationship with that card. But the problem with that card is that it ultimately crept the game into a state in which you were just getting a bunch of free stuff, and that's just not okay. Again, our game is not Yu-Gi-Oh! We have a mana-based system on purpose. We don't need to be getting free cards for free. That's just not cool. Although I will admit, it was really cool seeing old school Machina come back.
Yeah,
it was actually kind of cool to see.
Yeah, for sure. And I still think there's something to him at the casual level. I think that like the casual locals level, there's still definitely some really good stuff that you can do with Machina. It's just not like degenerate things, because Machina kind of went from like doing absolutely nothing to like just full send it.
I'm a little split on Origins, but I understand that I'm more happy to see it gone than I am to see it like with us.
Sure.
I think Origin Drivewing was a little too powerful for what they intended it to be.
Yeah.
And which is something you're just gonna see going into the Wanderer environment. We're gonna be still working out the kinks in this for a long time, but
yeah.
Being able to use your sideboard as a second deck is just not. Why?
Yeah, no. Welcome to side decks. We have side decks. Welcome to side decks. We have side decks again. I mean, we saw that at FowFest too, right? We saw like without Origins in the meta, we suddenly saw a lot more counterplay come into games 2 and 3 because people had side deck stuff, so they could cover more of their bases, which in general is what the game is supposed to be. So that was really nice. Dan, are you trying to say ban Sacred Burial? Stop. Card is perfectly.
It's not.
Card is perfectly fine.
That's Teldra.
Oh, Teldra? Cards perfectly fine. Sacred Burial is allowed to exist. Yeah, we went from first gear to 5th gear immediately. Yeah, for sure. Well, Stranger, Toby, to your point about, if they had just eroded Warhorse, I think that you only solve half the problem if they went for that of once per turn versus once per search, because the game would still be, how many times can I search? Like, I need to be able to search every turn on my turn and your turn, and the whole game just rotates and focuses on how do I abuse Warhorse. And I think by just outright banning it, you just clear that wave. Something that we at our locals do, and this is something for people who have like smaller communities, something to consider as well, is when we have a card that's banned, anything like that, we allow our local players to play a banned card if it's printed in a starter deck, if the starter deck is unchanged. So like if we have someone at our locals who plays the Aristella starter deck, we're not going to stop them from playing Warhorse. Like, we want you to play the game, right? And we'll explain to you like, hey, if you're going to make tweaks to this deck, you're going to have to find, 4 replacements for Warhorse, but that's an easy thing to find. But it's not going to stop you from playing it right now. And I do think that people should follow that same kind of lead. Al Argento, do we have any idea who these 5 people on the poster are? Not a clue. Not a single friggin' clue. The Matrix Incarnate, Bookman, and Mysterious. Yeah, those are good descriptions, Paul. I appreciate that.
I remember the 5th one.
my biggest takeaway from this ban list, I have 2 big takeaways, other than like how nice it is, right? I guess I have 3 big takeaways. Well, 2 big takeaways and a message is This was we've again setting precedent of the company recognizing that sometimes combination bans don't go far enough, and they're willing to bump up from combination bans to full bans, right? That's really, really big, right? Coming from an era where even if we did have a ban list, like a normal ban list, we didn't have the combination ban list, things didn't change very often, and it was hard to advocate for heavy change. In this instance, iSpy has once again shown that they are willing to switch from the scalpel to the hammer when it's needed and in an effective time frame, right? Like we went from let's try Origins ban with just one thing to 3 months later, nope, that's not enough. It really just needs to get the hammer, and they hammered it. That to me is huge, right? That's very, very huge to me. It shows a commitment to the game state. It shows a commitment to wanting to improve things. It shows paying attention to what's being talked about, what's being played, and what's being successful and why, which is really good. My second big message is that they focus their attention for the combination ban lists on the interactions of old and new, not new and new. Both of the past two combination ban lists have had cards within the new set banned together, which caused a lot of turmoil and strife. This new ban list only has like new cards that have combination bans are only combination banned with old cards, which is correct. Like that's a lot better to me. And the fact that they're being proactive about it means that they are actually like looking back at the old cards that they've printed to try to catch things before they become a problem, which I think is great. I think it's very, very good.
Imagine an R&D team that wants.
I want to shake the hand of their new producer. The producer that's in the YouTube videos. I have not spoken to this person. I want to, because I want to shake their hand, because they're making good calls, and it's really nice.
It's amazing that we have a company that's like, no, we'll test our things to make sure that the game feels good.
Yeah.
What a refreshing feeling.
And my other big thing is a message to people. Origins Drywing is gone. Drywing is not. Please remember this. Because you know who just got a lot better? Typhon. Because not only can...
I thought you were going to say Olivia.
Well, that too, but also Typhon. Because Typhon's like, hey, what if I just ordered a quick cast 1-drop black card and got Drywing? Also, Drywing can't stop Typhon from using Typhon's blood anymore. So now Typhon gets to be the one who's playing Origins and gets blood back. So, like, don't rely too heavy on will cheating, folks. Because you'll get paired up against a Typhon player and they'll take you to task. There you go. My message to you. Yeah, the little engineer.
Olivia, too.
Olivia
can
can do
little abused Drywing.
You can do it on T0.
Giving so many buffs to Olivia.
You can do it on T0. It's bad, but you can do it on T0. You won't have a stone to untap, but you could do it on T0. Don't do it. It's bad.
Don't do it. It's bad. Just don't do it.
It's okay. Just use coin and your first stone to do it. Then you at least have one will open. It's much better. Yeah, that ban list, like everything about that ban list to me just hit all the right notes. It just set in the message it sent, in the cards that it hit, in what it brought back into the environment, and its willingness to look at old things and bring them back into the environment. It felt very, very nice. It felt respectful of the game's history. It felt respectful of encouraging people to go back and look at like fan favorite cards. I mean, I built Turbo Seal Kaguya Brunhild in like 15 minutes after that ban list dropped. It's sleeved up.
I pulled all of my...
It's sleeved up and ready to go.
Psych stuff is now back in the pile.
Yep.
I wanted to try Adam Psych with the last set, but I was like, they're just not enough quite yet to make
And then
it
you got
valuable.
Kaguya.
And I got Kaguya, and I'm like, Adam Lawn, here we go.
Does Kaguya not being hit mean Hanzo comes back to top tierness? No. Hanzo doesn't get to exist at top tier just because Kaguya exists. The reason why Hanzo was top tier was because the best decks at the time were all rune decks, and Hanzo was the anti-rune deck rune deck. Honestly, Brunhild and Adam are probably the best rune rulers out the gate. Like now that Kaguya is unbanned.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I put Loki in there too.
yeah, because you get
okay.
perfect Loki, right?
Yeah.
Typhon starts the game with 10,000 life. Correct. Or more. We had someone at Foul Press running 147 cards. So they started the game with 14,700 life. That's the thing that you can do, I guess, if you want to.
You can do that. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very exciting, and it's almost kind of really funny that this ban list got me so excited looking at older rulers and giving some power back to older rulers right as the 10th anniversary set is dropping. Because I'm also like, I was hungry in having cracked open my 10th anniversary set. I was like, what deck do I play with these old rulers? And then the ban list dropped, and I went, oh, I know exactly which ruler I'm going to play from this collection. So it worked out. It worked out great. We did have someone with 200 cards at Minnesota. That was a choice.
Wild.
And then they got Inferno'd, and then they lost.
Oh no.
Oh no. Yeah, it's very very exciting. Yeah, and we're starting out. Also, let's talk about new set. Right? Lots of colorless additions that slow down other rulers. Solid spells from the 2 new sets, correct, for sure. The best designed floodgate that Fow's ever made in the form of That's No Moon. Nice White needs to make new inheritance cards for Varia. I mean, there's been a bunch of they're not inheritance. I'm sorry, they're just pay to discard them. Whoops, that's not inheritance. It's the same mechanic without the name. Alogento, I imagine Typhon is extremely popular or not at all. You're not wrong. Because it's either you have a crap ton of bloods or antibodies, or you don't have enough to play Typhon, so you can't. Lucas Balog, follow the game from afar. Is Fox dead? At a competitive level, yes. At a casual level of even people who tend to try to optimize their decks but don't mind just playing, they play what they want to play, Fox is still good. Fox got some very cool tools in this past set. He also got some ways to be able to, give himself some boosts from Brad's cards, to keep himself good. He hasn't gotten any new chimeras, and he's gotten some cards to be able to protect himself a little bit better. But he's a solid tier 2.5 ruler. Fun, still an absolute blast to play, especially at the local level. But bringing him to a tournament and expecting to top with him the game has evolved past that in 4 years. Because Fox is that many years old.
Still a very fun ruler. You will have a ton of fun at locals or just casually playing with him because he's, relatively cheap still.
Yes.
So that's nice.
Yeah, he's still very, very fun. Okay, so let's talk new rulers. So right now, you and I are working on building. I have Reinhardt built, and I know you have Hyde built, because I know that right out the gate people want to see the EX areas because they feel like it's the most mechanically unique rulers. So we wanted to hit those right out the gate. One thing to note for people is that we will be focusing our deck profiles for the first set of rulers for these channels at max 2 contracts per deck. Max 2. So Death Scythe needs 2. Death Scythe needs 2.
I guess Death Scythe.
Right.
That's right.
That kind of thing. But gotcha. we will be trying to focus on trying to stick to 1 or 2 contracts per ruler, to kind of show off the mechanic and to show that you don't need to necessarily have more than that contract wise to be able to play a fun deck with that ruler and that mechanic, especially because it does seem like there was not enough time to fix the pull rates for set 2, and so we want to do our best to show you that, to show that the rulers themselves are much better designed to be more engaging, even if you don't have multiple contracts. And so that's what we're doing. So just as a heads up. So Paul, you've been playing with Hyde a little bit. I've been playing with Reinhardt a little bit. How's the EX area treating you?
It's pretty good. I'm only using one contract in my list right now, just to like keep it all on terms with what we want people to experience. EX area is fun. There's some interesting tools that I'm tooling around with now, like Cone, Rusty's Fox, using him a little bit more. Realizing that ice shackles can be played around if you have the right stuff.
Oh yeah, like Shackles of Ice is pretty good against. Yeah, Shackles of Ice would be pretty good with her, against her.
Yeah. So Dispelling Stones, and what's really cool about the deck though is that it has built into it ways to put things from your hand into the EX area, even if you're under ice shackles, which is really, really interesting. And seeing how bad that sucks to get hit by that, and just knowing that, at least in my experience, having one cost addition hate would have been really, really, really helpful, not just relying on Rusty's knife technique or whatever. It would have gone a lot farther. And so like I've tweaked the deck. We gave me another shot this week, try to get some recordings for you all, and it's interesting.
Yeah, Reinhardt has felt, the possession area has felt very interesting as well, because we've had decks in Foul's history that have wanted to like sacrifice themselves, or like, you know, thinking like inheritance, or it's not inheritance, but like incarnation, stuff like that. So very much in a very similar way to how the EX area for ninjutsu is like stealth 2.0. I kind of feel like the possession area is a little bit like Incarnate 2.0, because so much of the mechanic is built on like sacrificing your own stuff, or like controlling when stuff is going to go from field to grave or leave the field, to get like to sacrifice something to generate additional value to turn it into something else. And one of the biggest weaknesses of old Incarnation was that like you're sacrificing multiple things to put out a new thing. But like the things, but the things that we were sacrificing, we always tried to find ways to make those where I would get value if I sacrificed them, but it wasn't always there. Whereas like everything, because the possession area exists, everything has the possibility to be that value, right? And I will say the other way that it's like Incarnation 2.0 is that it gives it a better win con of turning the things that we sacrificed into fuel for the push. Like for the final push. Like Soul King, or sorry, Ethereal King, does a really good job of being like, oh, these things that I put here earlier, now I'm going to use them and kill you, right? So he does, it's very, very cool. It does feel like that. And it feels refreshing in a way that it's like coming back to something that I'm familiar with, but seeing how it's improved. So in a very similar way, we talked about this before, how Reflect and Refrain feel like they took old Reflect Refrain, ascended them, and then brought them into the new mechanical world of contracts, right? They're like, what if we ascended Reflect Refrain and then translated that to this cluster's gimmick? And in a very similar way, Kaguya, or ninjutsu and possession feels like similar kind of thing. Like, what if we took the stealth mechanic, ascended it, and then brought it into, you know, this cluster's gimmick? What if we took the incarnate engine, like the incarnate style decks, ascended them, and then brought them into this kind of thing? Like, I was searching for Adam Brawleys. Like, I was legitimately trying to find Adam Brawleys for the possession deck. I have to go hunting for them because I think I know where they are, but like I didn't grab them yet. But even to that kind of sense, I was like, oh, incarnate cards would go so good with these. Like I was looking for Rasputins, I was looking for like all these old incarnate cards, and so
interesting.
It's done this really interesting thing where it makes me want to play new cards, but it also makes me want to go back and look at old cards in a way that set one didn't. Right? Like set one to me didn't make me want to go look back at old cards, because the cards that set one rulers wanted to play were so glaringly obvious that there was nothing to think about. Aristella, Use a fairy tale deck. What fairy tales are we gonna play? Neverending Dark Alice. Like that's like the end of the conversation, right? You just go grab those, and we were already putting those in like the staple box. Falchion was like, what green cards are we gonna play? Probably the good green cards from Saga Cluster. Yeah, okay, cool. That makes a lot of sense. You know, it just wasn't a lot of. To me, set one didn't push me to expand my Wanderer viewfinder, right? It was just like, gonna use this and splash in a couple cards. Whereas, and I'm sure competitively, these rulers don't necessarily want to go too far into the bin with the stuff, but that's not what we're all about here on Ruler School. We're about like, let's go explore, let's go have some fun. And so, looking at Hyde, looking at R&R, looking at Reinhardt was like, oh man, there's a lot of really cool old cards that I could put in and use in this deck, which would feel cool. So that was nice. Also, the new ban list made me like I said, I rebuilt Turbo Seal Pandora and then also brought it up to current standards. So like I think, let's see, that list is using Saga Cluster, Dual Cluster, Hero Cluster, Lapis Cluster, 4 clusters worth of and Valhalla Cluster. That deck is using five sets worth of cards, or 5 clusters worth of cards in a single deck. And like that's dope. Like that's the best part about it, is just like, oh man, look at all these awesome cards I'm using. Oh no, it's not. No, I apologize. 6 because of Moonshade, because we got to use Moonshade in that deck. Grim Cluster.
Cards Eternal.
Grim Cluster. Lapis. Anything from Lapis Cluster? I don't think anything from Lapis Cluster. Grim Cluster, Raya Cluster, New Valhalla Cluster, Saga Cluster, Dual Cluster, Hero Cluster.
Mm-hmm.
Six clusters worth of cards in that deck.
I think it's interesting because I remember you and I were having this conversation a while ago.
Yeah.
When the set first came out, like when the new cluster even just came out, because I saw Justice and was like, oh, like Monster Rush,
Sure.
Whispers from the Wind, like Final Breeze. I was like, oh yeah, all the torrent cards, like my mind immediately went there, and like didn't go to the newer stuff at all.
Sure.
Like my initial stuff was like, Engineer, seems kind of wonky. Didn't read into that card at all. It was just like, oh, okay.
You can't read into it anymore. Can't read into it anymore.
Yeah. Not with Falchion anyway. Mumu was fine. The drone wasn't very good. I played like a couple of Missile Pod. But now I'm like, after like seeing the evolution of that deck and like seeing people like pulling out Campanella of all things,
yeah,
and being like, let's just get the moon that lets us draw a card. Like that seems really solid.
Yeah.
Like last set's rulers were interesting in the sense that I think I remember describing it this way to you on this podcast. It felt like it was a set for the entirety of the game of Force of Will, not just for the new cluster.
Yeah.
This feels more. This set feels more siloed in the sense that people are going to have an easier time building the core of the decks, a lot easier. But then it's going to be seeing like what older stuff has more synergy with this new stuff. Whereas I think the first set of the cluster wasn't quite siloed.
And I think that comes down to ruler design, right? I think it speaks to the real differences between ruler design, is because set 1 rulers, their identity was grab an addition. So really you weren't, and all of them could grab any of the edition, right? So it really, like, the rulers themselves didn't really have text other than like what card they were, and like it was decided based on what contracts you wanted or what mastery spell you wanted. So there was a lot more like free form nature of the deck building, because it was just like, the deck needs to be self-sufficient because your ruler is a blank piece of card. So we saw with like Contractless Falchion, and we saw Dirtle Falchion, and we saw Justice Falchion, and we saw all kinds of different stuff. So to that end, I get that for sure, in terms of just they're so open. And this set, did a really good job, I think, of pivoting to, okay, this ruler has a mechanic. Someone pointed out to me of like, set 1 rulers felt like rune rulers, and set 2 rulers felt like Rhea cluster rulers in terms of like identity, right? Where set 1 rulers, set 1 rulers were like build a rune deck based on the color you want, and the master rune, right? And so in the same sense, it's the same kind of thing, right? It's like build a main deck based on which contract you want and which mastery spell you want, because your ruler's text is meaningless, right? So it's that same kind of concept where the deck itself is very open, and you're using the ruler just to kind of define some deck building parameters. Whereas Rhea cluster was, oh, this is the gem ruler, oh, this is the elemental ruler, oh, this is, that kind of thing. And so set 2 rulers feel a lot more like
ruler.
the weather ruler. So set 2 feels a lot more like that, which I think is really, honestly, really cool to see in back-to-back sets within the same cluster, right? Because I think they scratched such different itches, but were released so similarly that what you as a player are drawn to, are you drawn to the archetypal ruler where you really like their mechanic and that's why you want to play them? Or are you drawn to, I want a lot of flexibility into my deck building, but I don't really want to be limited or hindered by having to play to a certain mechanic. Like, so you can go to set 1 or set 2. And to see that in this new era of FOW, that real core differentiation between the same cluster is really cool. It's really refreshing.
Yeah,
I like it.
It's interesting how like set 1 feels like the topic sentence, and like now we're getting into the meat of the paragraph.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Did you know I'm an English major?
I did. Yeah, I did know that.
But I guess you didn't know.
Set 1 was like a tease, like you said. It was the topic sentence. It was like, this is what Moon Children rulers are like. This is the idea of the cluster. And now set 2 is like, okay, now that we've introduced you to what the idea of the cluster is, here's how you like specialize that idea to a mechanic, which has pros and cons for sure. The pro is that there's a lot of silver lining to only pulling 1 contract in the fact that like your deck itself can feel a lot more like you're playing to an archetype because your ruler itself isn't just a blank piece of text. But the downside is like none of the new rulers really have any mastery stuff, which some people really like playing with the mastery mechanic, right? So it's kind of like they both have a kind of even a standalone unique flavor. Set 1 had a lot more mastery to it. Set 2 barely has any. So that's interesting to me as well. In a cool way. I like it. And I can't wait to see what set 3 brings to it. Sun Children. Can you use Sun Children and Moon Children at the same time? That's a big question.
That's a good question. Well, it also brings up the idea that, we had monochromatic rulers for set 1.
Yep.
Dual color rulers for set 2. So are we going to get the rest of the dual colors for set 3? Or are we going back to single color?
Aristella was blue-white. Asuka was green-red or green-black. Vigo was red-black.
Oh, you're right. Never mind.
The Moon Children were monochromatic, and the new Moon Children
were monochromatic.
And the new Moon Children are still monochromatic.
Never mind. I'm just gonna shut up.
It's okay, buddy. It's okay. But but like you almost kind of reinforced
justice, and I'm like, oh, it's green, so who cares?
But you almost kind of reinforced my point here of like the rulers themselves were blank. Right? That we don't even think about their color, right? Like they just felt like a piece of card text, right? Doesn't matter if your ruler is green black, you were grabbing wall off the top. Doesn't matter if you were red black, you were grabbing wall. It's like the ruler itself really didn't feel like a ruler, right? The driving factor of it was the Moon Children. Set 2, these rulers feel like, yes, this is the mechanic I want to play with.
The one exception would be where I feel like Vega definitely felt like a black-red like ruler card.
Sure.
In the sense that like once you got Berserker, I was like, oh god, this thing is just gonna murder everything. With that being said, like going all the way down to like Justice, like if you can just not run a contract with Justice, you're good to go.
Yeah. Vampire
Carousel and
989.
Oscar kind of melt in between.
Vampire 989. Thinking about them, how more versatile and powerful our current game is compared to when it was like an Alice Lapis New Valhalla with the new RR. Any thoughts on Orb Evolution coming back? It can't. So here's the thing.
They made a new card.
So here's the thing. I would say, I'll go out on a limb here. If some of Reflect and Refrain's best cards didn't have mastery on them, I'd let you have Orb back. Nope. You can't have it back. The biggest thing about old RR was the fact that it's accelerating, and the whole idea was that Reflect generated counters, Refrain burned them, and Orb helped to gain them faster, right? New Reflect and Refrain can have Reflect generating them while Refrain burns them in the same like sequence on a consistent basis, and they have cards that don't require them to actually burn them to get better. They have cards that just say, "Oh, do you have 7? Great, extra text." Don't even have to spend 7. It's just, oh, you have them. And so that kind of acceleration with the free card of Orb just can't. Because also Orb is also card draw, right? They gave you Wanderer Castle. Wanderer Castle to me is a perfectly fine replacement for Orb. That's fair.
They give you Piggy Bank.
And they also give you Piggy Bank, which is very cool. Yeah, so there are Orb replacements to me that I think are more fair and more reasonable in the current environment. Like,
this
Orb cannot come back
to us every once in a while where we got like a new card and we were like, oh, that's them trying to say like you're never getting that.
Yeah, Piggy Bank was that. Piggy Bank was that. Yeah, for sure. Piggy Bank and Castle, right? Especially because Castle has mastery with either Reflect or Refrain, right? So you can get it out really, really quickly. Like you have ways to get free counter generation that aren't just like so much value, so free.
Just play this free thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Like you don't really have that.
And anymore. Also draw an extra card every turn because yeah, for sure. No thanks. So good question though. I mean, not controversial. I mean, I don't. People have been talking about it since we saw the new RR. I don't think you're controversial. It's a fair topic.
You're ask that question, right?
Yeah.
It's natural to ask that.
They got that old 2-drop too.
I'm super interested. So you're really interested in new Reflect Refrain.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in building for old Reflect Refrain.
Yeah.
New support.
This is actually something we're doing on the channel. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it too because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what could this become?
Yeah. So this is a question for the audience, I think. So Paul and I are both going to take a look at Reflect and Refrain. I'm going to be specifically looking at Order or Contract Reflect Refrain. Paul is going to be looking at OG Reflect Refrain with their new support. And we're both going to be building that. So the question becomes this, which is totally fair, and I'm just springing on this on Paul now. Okay. Do we do it as 2 back-to-back feature matches? Or do you and I set up a day to sit down and get a bunch of games recorded to do a versus of old versus new Reflect Refrain?
Oh my gosh. That's a poll. That's
yeah.
A poll.
We don't have time for it now. I'll post it in the global later, but like I think both of those could be fun. That would be like a day though. Like you and I would have to like sit down for a day and like
oh yeah.
We're not just gonna sit down and record 3 games and be like, oh yeah, that was good. Like we want to make sure it was
go
like
see my best friend.
How dare you?
In my favorite city on earth.
Yeah, how dare you? How dare I make you drive? Yeah, that would be fun. I think to have old versus new and just like see how they're different because like there are things that like old new Reflect Refrain gets that old Reflect Refrain doesn't, in the form of like Phoenix. Like you don't get Phoenix. Because you can't do contracting and some stuff like that. But you also have, a lot more just passive advantage generation. So that's interesting
you also
too.
Have a win con. I don't have a win.
That's true because I have Phoenix. I have the win con that is Phoenix.
You have Phoenix. You have J rulers with stats. You have more J rulers than I do.
That's true. I do have more J rulers than you. Yeah. Do stealth Kaguya versus hide. That's honestly something I've thought about too. Is revisiting like these old versus new. We could even do like a reincarnation of like versus a gold incarnate deck versus like
Ooh,
versus
Blazer
Reinhardt.
Cthulhu.
Blazer Cthulhu's. Ooh.
Blazer Cthulhu
Versus Reinhardt. Don't hate that idea. These are neat. These are neat ideas.
Neat ideas.
Okay, but enough about the neat ideas. It's time for us to go for today. Thank you all so much for being here. It was a pleasure to talk to you all about all the craziness that was happening this past week. Just so you know, hold on, I'm gonna sneeze. Sorry about that. Just so you know, this week we are going to have a couple of games of Paul continuing to try to make Olivia work versus Dan Rowland playing some Lucifer, Rune Ruler Lucifer. So look forward to that on Wednesday and Tech Profiles later this week. Also, this week, you are going to see the premiere of the 10th anniversary collection unboxing. I have been given permission to post that this week. It looks so good.
Wait,
and then
this game isn't dead?
Nope. Still here.
Still here.
So, Paul, we played the Nope.deck for RR. That's fair. So stay tuned for that for later this week. And as always, thanks for so much for being here. Consider clicking that join button if you're not already to consider supporting us. And until next time, this is DMO73 and Paul Reisman saying, class dismissed.